Let's talk about more about this now with Pepe Escobar. He's a roving correspondent for the Asia Times. Pepe, Adrian, to you, thanks for being with us. Now, following America's lead, the EU today, didn't it, imposed sanctions on the Libyan leader's regime, trying to establish contact with the opposition. I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think we're witnessing echoes, maybe, of what happened in the Balkans back in the 90s, i.e. foreign interference to wield influence?
Well, I think to a lot of people this will sound and look like a Freddy Krueger movie. You know, this is very, very ugly. The return of humanitarian imperialism. So things have to be very clear. Okay, sanctions against the Gaddafi clan, freezing their assets in Europe. That's okay. But no NATO imperialist adventurism in North and Africa. This, depending how the situation evolves, depending of this push of Eastern liberated Libya, if they have enough weapons and they can organize a push towards Tripoli, this is what they're actually doing now as we speak. If this doesn't work, and the next step being discussed already in Brussels, in London, and in Washington would be a NATO invasion, this would be absolutely disgusting. But we cannot rule it out for the moment.
I want to talk about that a bit more in a minute, but really I guess one of the big drivers here is energy. I'm talking oil production in Libya. It's dropped by almost half during this unrest. To what extent is oil driving Western reaction over the region's crisis?
Absolutely crucial, because, you know, Libya, they export 1.7 million barrels a day. The protests are spreading to Oman. Oman produces more or less 800,000. So can you imagine if in 1 week or two we have 2.5 million barrels of oil a day out of the market? Like Saudi Arabia could compensate it 1 million, million and a half, but not the 2.5 million. And this would have the barrel of oil going to $130 or $140. It's already $114 today. So, yes, it's absolutely essential. So I would say that the rationale for a possible Western intervention in Libya would be if the oil production in Libya and in Oman would cease completely.
Another angle to this, many condemning, of course, the Libyan regime's hardline actions against protesters. What is the likelihood, though, do you think, of us ever seeing trials over human rights abuses?
Well, this is it's in an enormous hypocritical conundrum, isn't it? Because the U.S., they don't support The Hague because they are terrified of having U.S. politicians, like former presidents, or the Pentagon generals, brought to the ICC on the accusations of crimes against humanity, ranging from everything from Iraq to the Afghan-Pakistan tribal areas. But on the other hand, they want the Gaddafi clan to be brought to the ICC. And as one of your reporters were saying, can you imagine if Gaddafi will tell us on a 24/7 basis the collaboration of Libya with the Blair, Bush, Berlusconi trio that, brought Gaddafi back to the international community, all the shady deals involved, all the shady financial deals with Italy, especially, which has invested at least $50 billion in the oil industry in Libya, and the dodgy relationships with virtually every European government, not to mention the US, and arms dealers from Britain. It would be a fantastic show, wouldn't it?
Pepe, we touched on it just now quickly. Russia's leading calls for other countries to let Libya find its own path. How capable, though, is the country of securing its own future by its own devices?
Look, I would say Russia is calling for the right thing, but we don't know. It's a concourse of circumstances. They formed a committee in Eastern liberated Libya, Benghazi and all the other cities, to coordinate how to run Eastern Libya in the next few weeks and how to coordinate this push towards Sirte, because Sirte is critical. Sirte is where the Gaddafi tribe comes from. It's on the way, on the road from Benghazi to Tripoli in the Mediterranean. If you conquer Sirte, then you can encircle Tripoli completely. But this is not a given, because there's a lot of Gaddafi loyalists that are concentrated in Sirte as well. So if they manage to do this, let's say within the next week or 10 days, then we're going to have an assault on Tripoli. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be civil war. It's going to be a bloodshed. but it would be the end game. But nobody knows if this is going to happen in the next 2 days.
Pepe Escobar in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thanks for your thoughts on RT tonight. It's appreciated.